Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Georgia, and it is time for the TT Time with Dr. Tarver is a wellness-based podcast. It is not intended to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health provider. It's Tuesday. March has 5 Tuesdays, so I was thinking this was my last Tuesday in March, but actually it'll be next Tuesday. So good thing I checked because I'd be telling you all this was the last Tuesday in March and y'all will be coming for me. So, welcome back to our series, Wise Women, which is reflecting on all of the wonderful leadership characteristics that women have and the ones that I think are particularly valuable given that they give us things like hope and accountability and allow us to be able to understand the importance of justice and kindness in seeing humanity and finding our voice and all of the wonderful things that make women such effective leaders. We have gotten into this series. Each week, I try to address someone who I feel like has been influential. Get your words together, girl. In women leadership, we've talked about Shirley Chisholm. We have talked about Iyanla Van Zant. I think I want to pay homage today. You all probably have heard this as well by now. So I believe it was last week when I first heard of what I can only describe as an act of love and resilience, strength, hope for humanity, a reflection of faith, seeing people who sometimes are made to feel invisible and as if they don't have worth and value. Dolores Huerta. She and I share a first name and we spell it the same way. When she was being interviewed, the interviewer said, "Oh, hey, your name it means sadness or sorrow," and that's what I've always thought about my name as well until it was expressed to me. That is more of the deep feeling that you have, the feeling of empathy that you have for others, that you hurt when others hurt, and I think that's very fitting for us both. Dolores, Miss Herta, she learned that some women came forward to make some allegations against a man with whom she co founded the United Farm Workers, Cesar Chavez. This man has had holidays named after him and schools named after him and has been thought long to be someone who was an advocate, someone who spoke on behalf of the marginalized, those who had been exploited and taken advantage of, only to find out that he actually has a history of allegations of sexual abuse toward multiple women and girls. And I can only imagine for Ms. Huerta how she must have felt at 95 years old to hear someone else recite something that sounded very familiar to her. Interestingly, as she was sharing her story, she'd been sexually assaulted and raped, resulting in pregnancies, and allowing children who are products of rape to be in your life, on to families to take care of them, but still having relationships is to me beyond something that's imaginable. She does not believe in abortion. And so she has had conversations with one of the girls about her dad and who he is, who he was. And bravery, that's all that comes to mind, to put yourself aside to focus on the interest of others, even if it means you having to pack away some things that are really, really painful for you. She only became tearful when she was describing not what had happened to her and how her life had been forever altered, but when she was describing the experiences of those women who have come forward to talk about their sexual assault. And she could not, in good conscience, not say anything despite its potential impact on her. And you all know the impact when you come and you, years later, talk about someone who is a strong political leader or just well known in the community, well respected, whatever the case may be. The first questions are typically going to include, why did you wait so long? And why now? What do you have to gain from this? And I was, when I tell you, my faith in humanity is constantly restored, I was absolutely joyful to hear that no one did that with her. She is a woman who has absolutely seen others, advocated for others, spoke up for others, worked very hard for people to have the rights that they deserve, the pay they deserve, the conditions that they deserve, to be restored things that have been taken from them because of the relationship she has built, because of the work that she has done when she co founded the United Farm Workers. She was received with love, unconditional support, and encouragement, and immediately things started changing. We're not celebrating this day from now and henceforth more. It will be a farm workers, honor of the work of those who do so much for us and often receive so little for doing it. She was met with open arms and grace and kindness. And my heart is still full. I could not be more happy about that. That no one tore her down, but they understood how difficult it must have been for her to share something so vulnerable, and to be able to find her voice and also to continue to use her voice for the benefit of others. And so, what are we talking about today? We are talking about finding your voice and why that's such an important aspect of leadership. I know a lot of times people don't think much about it. What do you mean finding your voice? You're able to speak, you're not finding it, it's there. There are so many times in life where women in particular have been silenced. You are taught to be seen and not heard, even from childhood. You are taught to be polite and mannerable. You are taught to eat those feelings. You are taught that it's not about you. You need to pull yourself together and you need to present yourself in a certain way. You are taught to serve others. You are taught to be mindful of how you carry yourself, be mindful of your tone, be mindful of your attire. You are taught not to whine, not to complain. You are taught not to be too aggressive. You are taught to be pleasant and amenable. You are taught to be compliant. You are taught to respectfully mind your business and to stay in your place. And it makes it incredibly challenging when people, particularly those in your life who have harmed you, will say to you that what you experienced isn't valid, real, and true. To either dismiss it or downplay it, or hold you responsible for why it was done to you. You have, as a woman, seen other women being torn down because her makeup was too high, too heavy, or too light, because she was too large or too small, because she was too tall or too short, because she wasn't able to walk in those heels, because she didn't have on heels, because her skirt was too short, because her skirt was too long, because her blouse was too tight, because her blouse was too loose, because she didn't have her hair done, because her hair was too done, because her nails were ornament, because her earrings were too flashy, or she was too plain. It is absolutely exhausting. And what it does is it stifles our voice. We feel like we have to be in a certain mode, live up to a certain narrative and expectation. There's a lot of pressure placed on women about whether or not you're chosen, And if you keep your husband, if you're able to have children, how you raise those children, your diction and your ability to read, and you should be very caring and nurturing and loving, and you should let things roll off, and you should extend people grace. And unfortunately, the outcome of that, one of my favorite researchers and authors and all of the things, Brene Brown, I've shared a good bit of her work with you all, just talks about how whenever you utilize your voice, it requires you to be vulnerable. If you're going to embrace authentically yourself, you have to be very brave. You have to be very intuitive. You have to be very insightful. And honestly, you have to have a little bit of a thick skin, because the impact it's going to have on you initially can be very, very tough. Now, ultimately, when you find your voice, it is to be celebrated, and it is very liberating, not only for you, but its potential to liberate others. It knows no bounds. However, to get to that point is really challenging, and oftentimes women still face barriers, particularly those in leadership, because they are scrutinized so heavily, whether it is in church or in organizations or in schools or around board tables. There is constantly, whether it's dealing with, unfortunately, misogyny, sexism, you can have the dual intersection of race with racism. Then women are, hey, you need to be able to take a joke. I didn't mean it that way. You took it out of context. You're expected to receive whatever attention that you get, even if it's unwanted, and to be kind in it. And so, what oftentimes women can do is that they will then shrink. Women will gain weight so that they don't get that attention. They will hide and not go out places so they don't have to worry about being scrutinized. They become quietly resentful about having to make sure that they know where to place the dinnerware, and to have etiquette constantly, right? And so they're doing it, but they're doing it not because they want to. They're doing it because they feel like if they don't, then it means that they're less than, or that they will be met with criticism or physical assault. The amount of women who have had their food thrown on the floor or thrown in the garbage or thrown back in their faces because it didn't meet the expectation of the person that was being served. So if you are a woman who is second guessing whether or not you have the potential to be a leader, and if your opinion is valid, if it matters, if you have found yourself losing your voice and not having the confidence in your ability to express yourself, or not feeling like you're brave enough to be able to be that open, or that you can and be safe, then this is for you. So I think, right, so we talk about why the voice is important. Your voice is needed. Your voice is powerful. Your voice is often something, again, that's a tool to liberate others. Your voice allows people who sometimes are invisible or feel invisible to be able to be seen. Your voice has a perspective that is unique to being a woman. It is one that comes from thoughtfulness. It comes from care and concern. It comes from wanting to see the humanity in others, wanting others to have the rights that they deserve, wanting people to be accountable, but also wanting people to be included, wanting people to do what's right, and wanting things to be fair and equitable, and wanting justice, and kindness, and wanting peace, right? All of these perspectives that go into being a woman who has to know a lot of different roles, because often women will tell you that they had to go above and beyond, that they had to know not only their responsibilities and duties, but others too, because they would often have to defend themselves when challenged, or bring the receipts, as the young people say, about why they were moving in a certain direction. Women, because when that voice comes out, sometimes it can be very powerful, it can be strong, it can be very off putting to people who will say you're loud and you're rude or uneducated and ignorant. And that is simply because they want to quiet your voice, right? People want to keep you in the places that benefit them. So your voice is needed so you can actually not only heal yourself, but heal others as well. I'll never forget being told that sometimes people are waiting on your breakthrough in order for them to get theirs. And not to put that pressure on you, but I think to encourage you about why your voice is needed, because you speaking up gives others power. And I think that's what happened, right? What I saw last week is that people being brave, despite not knowing how that information would be received when they spoke, it gave people other people strength to speak as well. So if you're trying to find your voice, it's important for you to always go back to your core, what your values are, what your beliefs are, what you see your purpose as being, what your gifts are, what your talents are, what your strengths are, the you that you dreamed about. She's the one that has the voice, the one that is not hindered. We always, when we would do women's ministry, would say naked and unashamed. There she is with all her flaws, with all of her struggles, with all of her mistakes, just bare and vulnerable, not for others to judge her, but for others to see her and recognize their own strength. You have heard women talk about their stretch marks. Their stretch marks are things that let people know what they've been through. Whether they've carried a child or whether they've weathered the storms and packed on a little bit of weight to be able to deal with all of the heaviness that they have to deal with in life. It reflects their growth. It reflects who they blossomed into. It reflects not having to starve yourself or not having to fit into certain things in order for you to be seen, valued, appreciated, and thought of as beautiful. It is something that requires some work, because I think sometimes we begin to question our own values and beliefs because we have a tendency to absorb what is around us. And if that's negative, if that's oppressing, if that is dismissive, if that is questioning, then oftentimes we will shut down and we'll think, well, maybe I'm wrong. And hopefully, you will hear from me today that you're absolutely right. Those values, those beliefs, your gifts, your skills, we need them. They're important. And as you begin to recognize who you've been called to be, it makes your voice all the stronger. I think it's also very hard to find our voices because it means that we have to be self aware. And sometimes we have guilt and we have shame. When I first started doing my podcast, it wasn't quite this long. In fact, when I was challenged by Apostle Sybil, she said, "Go ahead and just try for 5 minutes." I said, 5 minutes? I can't speak for 5 minutes. That's a long time. Maybe can get you a minute or two. And look at where we are now. I have to manage my time. Like, okay, you've been talking too long. Cut it down. So, but I think it was because also I didn't like hearing my own voice. I'd scrutinize it. I'd say, "Oh my gosh, you sound insert whatever there." I might sound nasally, or maybe I said too many ums. Maybe I said like too many times. Maybe I didn't enunciate my words clearly. Maybe I didn't have my points come across as clear as I would have wanted them to. Maybe I didn't make the right amount of eye contact. Maybe and I remember getting some feedback from a person who mentioned my eye contact. And all I did from that point forward was scrutinize any video that I ever made about my eye contact, because I had my paper there with my notes on it to stay on track, because I'll take you all down the river and through the woods. And I then thought, okay, well, now I've got to figure that out. I can't have notes because that doesn't, right? And in those things, they play around in your head so much And so sometimes being self aware feels like you're being self critical. But what it allows you to do is be able to understand what your strengths are and your areas for growth. And being able to interact with other people, and recognizing that those things are a part of you, not that they're things you need to be ashamed of, not that they're things you need to hold hostage and not allow yourself to be freed, but they are things that allow you to be able to understand who you are and why you are where you are. We talked about last week to first know yourself. And I think that's an important part of leadership in general is self-awareness because I need to know how I come across to other people. I need to know how I feel when other people are interacting with me. I need to be aware if there are some things I hide from myself because they're uncomfortable for me. And so it's not allowing me to fully be authentic and aware and present, which is showing up in how I serve as a leader. And then it also can affect this next thing, which is assertive communication. When you find your voice, you are aware that there are conversations that sometimes are going to be uncomfortable. They may be uncomfortable because it's somebody you care a lot about their opinion of you and you want them to see you in this very positive way. You may not want to hurt their feelings. You may think that expressing what your needs are means that someone's needs won't get met and that feels mean to you. It may be that I don't want to complain. I don't want to feel like I'm ungrateful. I don't want to feel like I'm always bringing things up. I don't want to rock the boat. So we're having all of this dialogue in our heads that is interfering with us being able to communicate with people. It's important for you to be able to express your thoughts and your feelings and your needs. Now, there also, as a part of that, is understanding the time and the place and ensuring that we're doing it in a respectful way and not in a passive aggressive or aggressive way. But I do think, or a passive way, but I do think it's important for us to understand that part of leadership is being able not only to stand up for others, but being able to stand up for yourself. And when you recognize that people are being hurt or taken advantage of, or something isn't a fair policy, or it's not being used consistently across the board, or the behaviors of some are affecting people in negative ways, or if it's a liability, or if it's something that could potentially cause problems down the line, whether that's legal or otherwise, then it is important for you to say something about it. When you're in spaces where people are being mistreated, it's important that you speak up. And I think a lot of times we don't want to, like this whole Karen thing has gone around, and what sometimes people interpret that is well, you can't say, you can't bring up anything, you can't say things, and that's not what the Karen memes and conversations are all about. That is a willful placing yourself in positions of authority and power and trying to create a narrative that benefits you. And oftentimes doing so in very loud and very wrong ways, which is very different than you saying, like, hey, I'm concerned because I see that there's this older man on this bike that's pulled up to this drive through talking to this young lady who looks like she's 16, and this man on this bike looks like he's about 35. And I want to make sure that she's safe, so I'm going to let management know, like, hey, are you aware that this man is kind of loitering around and he's talking to this young lady? I want to make sure that she's safe, right? It is when you see um, people by themselves and they don't look like they should be by themselves, whether it's a kid or somebody that looks lost or afraid or uncomfortable, scared, and you say something about it. It is those times when you're overcharged for services. It's those times when the services you received are not what was advertised and you didn't receive what you deserved. It is when you recognize that there is a different level of treatment for certain people. Those are the times when assertive communication is important in your relationships, with your staff, with the people who you're creating partnerships with, that they recognize your voice is just as important as any other voice, and that you're going to come well informed, well researched, well knowledgeable to be able to bring what you can to the table to ensure that your your role, that you meet the expectations of it, right? And that means that you got to practice. And so sometimes we got to start practicing with just in the mirror, like being able to look at yourself in the mirror. So many of us use mirrors in passing, but not necessarily really looking at ourselves. And that's part of that vulnerability and self awareness that we were talking about. Like, I need to be able to see me if I expect anybody else to be able to see me. And not to look at myself in this judgmental way, but to look at myself in this loving way and thinking about all that has taken for you to get here. So all of the things, challenging and joyful, made you who you are. And because of that, you are the leader who you are. And so being able to embrace her. I think also being able to just seek feedback and support. When you're trying to find your voice, initially, you again don't trust it. And you may not trust it for various reasons that we've kind of talked about. But in trying to get that voice, that trust in your voice back, having that positive feedback, that constructive feedback, and having support from other people who want what is best for you and want to see you achieve and grow is really, really important. Not because people are just going to tell you what you want to hear, not because people are going to, just stroke your ego and tell you you're amazing when behind your back they're telling other people that you're not. But the people who are going to be honest with you, who have created safe spaces in order to be honest with you about who you are and how you come across to others. One of the things that I used to do as a homework assignment for people is have them get written, no, little strips of paper, written notes from people about their positive characteristics. And they could put it in a Kleenex box or anything that they had and just pull them out, right, as affirmations to remind themselves of who they are. Because it's really important for people to hear from unbiased sources, objective information, for them to be able to see themselves through different eyes. Because sometimes we can be so, again, so negative on us, on ourselves. And that brings me to my next point of being able to challenge that negative self talk. One of the things that prevents us from finding our voice is because our inner critic is really, really loud. And it's like, yeah, you don't need to be speaking up about anything because if you do, I'm telling. Right. And so that inner critic can be really challenging for us to overcome. Because there are all these, why would anybody want to believe me? I know the challenges that I've had. I've struggled myself, so my voice isn't going to be important. It's not going to be heard. It's not going to be received, particularly if there's been a lot of examples of when it wasn't. And then thinking that other people know better than us and they are able to handle all of these things. And one of the things that I do realize is that you will never get better at any skill you don't practice. And so I know that some of you have had some talent out of the womb, but in general, when we talk about practice, it is because that rehearsal is needed for us to be able to improve a skill. And so as you're learning to find your voice, to use your voice, then it is important for you to practice using it, to practice combating that negative self talk. And then, we talk about restructuring. Like, let me turn that negative around into an affirmation. Let me turn that negative around into something that really is a more accurate reflection of who I am and how I've grown. You don't have to deny that you've made mistakes in order for you to be able to use your voice. You don't have to deny the challenges that you've had in your life in order for you to feel powerful enough to be able to talk to other people and share the gifts that you've been given. Those things can exist together. I can absolutely have made some mistakes, not had a very polished presentation all the time, and still be able to have the power to effect change in other people's lives. It sometimes just requires us taking a small step. And I do feel like the small steps to me are the ones that are the most meaningful because it takes so much to do a small step, right? You remember the thing you've been working on when you first started, how hard it was, and you had to really like work yourself up and probably with a lot of fear, just went ahead and did it. And it might have been rough and not the greatest, but you got it done and you were like, okay, right? And then the next time it wasn't as hard, and then the next time it wasn't as hard until you got to a point where it got more comfortable. And even if there's still anxiety or there's still shakiness when you use your voice, that doesn't mean that it's any less powerful because it doesn't feel necessarily as confident. But the more you say it and the more you hear yourself saying it and using it, the more powerful and strong that voice becomes. And sometimes it's not how strong it is, it just matters that it is. So, for those of you in this journey on leadership or just in your own relationships with people, in this own journey that you have of yourself and where you are in your life, I do want you to know that it doesn't have a time limit on it, finding your voice and strengthening it. So no matter where you are, you have the potential to get even stronger, to grow even more, to hear it, to begin to accept the way that it sounds, to be able to understand its power and its effect, and that you have the gift of being able not only to use your voice, but also to encourage others to use theirs. Okay? You all be well, and I'll see you next week for the last Tuesday in March as we address kindness.